Welcome to the Heroic Investing Show. As first responders, we risk our lives every day. Our financial security is under attack. Our pensions are in a state of emergency. A single on-duty incident can alter or erase our earning potential instantly and forever. We are the heroes of society. We are self-reliant and we need to take care of our own financial future. The Heroic Investing Show is our toolkit of business and investing tactics on our mission to financial freedom.
Welcome to the Heroic Investing Show, a podcast for first responders, members of the military, veterans, and anyone looking to improve their financial future and gain some freedom with their time. We teach America's heroes how to build passive income, build their startup business, and safely grow wealth through real estate and other alternative investments. We help current and prior first responders put protections, systems, and a team in place to help them build a life where they can focus on their passion, that service or product that they are uniquely gifted to share with others, making the world a better place for all of us. My name is Gary Pinkerton, and I co-host this show with Jason Hartman. This is episode 233. Today's guest is an amazing individual, Mr. Bill Higgs. Bill is a graduate of West Point, and we get into how he ended up going into the military, what he did in his time on active duty, and then why he transitioned out to running a company. He started an engineering company and turned it into a $2 billion company. There are so many nuggets in this episode, and I'll tell you, similar to when I interviewed the individual who started UGG boots, when you talk to billionaires, it's not hard to get some nuggets of information that are extremely helpful in your own life and in the future. And Bill now is running his own podcast, interviewing four-star generals, four-star admirals, and leaders in industry. Really, he talks a tremendous amount about culture here and how that's how he won out contracts left and right and how he turned his company into a $2 billion business eventually, and how he's helping other companies do the same thing. It's all about culture. I completely agree with the man. Bill and I connected immediately. I think you're going to do the same thing. Please help me in welcoming Mr. Bill Higgs. Well, heroic investors, welcome back. Today we have with us Mr. Bill Higgs, and Bill is a graduate of West Point. And he's already congratulated me for the awesome victory that we were so worried about, certainly on the Navy side after 3 years. So I won't drive that one home, but that was very gracious, my friend. Bill is kind of the Roger Staubach in the business world from the Naval Academy. So Bill started his own company when he finished his time in engineering and doing some kind of Army Ranger stuff that I'll let you talk about. But he created a $1 billion company. Now he's running an amazing podcast and teaching other people how culture gets you to $1 billion. Bill, welcome to our podcast.
Thanks, Gary, and thank you for your service. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you saying so, and for yours, sir, and for everybody else out there, first responders and active duty members of the military that are doing the same. We got a great new year. I think building in culture and how to treat people is a perfect first discussion for this. But really, what I was saying to you offline there is the main reason that I think this is such a great podcast for these listeners is that really one of my motivations is to teach the listeners how to have the confidence and the insight and the tools and the experience and the mentors out there that have already done this, and specifically figure out how to take this leadership that you've gained so much tremendous experience with and put it in the real world. Like, what inspires me and the reason I do this podcast is to get other people who are like our founding fathers and like all the amazing people leading corporations that have military experience, get the next generation doing that as well. So you're a guy that has done it and been there far beyond where I was. Tell us first, if you would, back up to at least back when you started at West Point and how you ended up in the military.
In high school, my mom took me to the dentist and he said, "Your teeth are good enough to get into a military academy." And it just went in one ear and out the other. But my mom on the way home says, "What'd you think about what the dentist said?" And I said, "What?" And she said, "Getting into a military academy." I go, "Well, I guess so. I'll try." And so I actually applied to the Naval Academy. And during the physical, I found out I was colorblind.
Colorblind, yeah.
And so they said, you can't be in the Navy or the Air Force, but you can be cannon fodder over there in the Army. So I switched over to West Point and had no idea what I was getting into on day one. I just thought, my parents went to drop me off. I said, let me go check in. I'll be right back. And I walked into an alternate universe. Had no idea what I was going into. Ended up in remedial marching because I marched to a different drummer, it turned out.
I didn't know that existed.
But was a me neither. A lot of West Pointers don't know it. But I walked on in soccer and walked on in wrestling and ended up also doing judo. But senior year was the sweeper on the soccer team that went undefeated and set the record for shutouts. So my goalie and myself, we did a pretty good job. But you might get a kick out of this in the Army-Navy soccer game. I scored for Navy.
Does that count against the shutout?
So I still wanted to go there. They just wouldn't let me in. But I like the audience that you have because it's military and first responders. And those people take care of each other. You don't take the hill because of the American flag or whatever. You take the hill because of your buddy. Yeah. Same with the first responders. And so it doesn't matter what their background is, where they came from. You take care of each other. And I think when you bring that to the civilian world, it's a differentiator because it's all about the people. And if you take care of the people and you weld them together as a team, the dollars, the work, everything else is going to take care of itself because people want to do a good job. You've just got to put them in the position to do it. But I think your audience is fantastic. So in the Army, I was gung-ho airborne ranger. I was king of the pits, probably due to wrestling and judo. But it came down to hand-to-hand combat. It came down to me and a Navy SEAL. The guy was about the same size as me, but had one of my best throws of my life and won king of the pits, which is sort of a cool thing in the Army. You might not know about it in the Navy. Went into the Army, went through atomic demolitions, which was a very unique unit. It was hand-picked people that had 2 years of college or more and were planning to use the GI Bill to go back to college. So imagine having a platoon full of people like that. Well, you might have in the nuclear submarine where you were, but in the Army, you didn't really get that hand-picked team that much. And I loved it. I ended up my last 2 years as a lieutenant. I got a company, combat engineers in the first cab. So we were still returning from Vietnam. Really a lot of people having tough problems readjusting to the civilian world. So learned a lot there. When I got up, went into the civilian world, I went into offshore oil business, which was pretty young, doing like platforms in 50 foot of water. And my mentor in the Army said, Bill, you got to come do this. They're like Army missions. Once the oil company hits oil, it's like, how fast can you get the men in the material and mobilize it, take it offshore and install it, beat the hurricane season, or maybe don't beat it and have to work around it type thing. And so I loved the industry, and it was boom time when I got out. This was Houston, Texas. So it was drive fast and freeze a Yankee. It was what we said. But in 82, the oil price went from like $12 down to $3.50. And from 82 to 92, it bounced between $5 and $25. And just
That's
a huge
tough time
downturn.
in Houston, right? That's when the billboards that said last man out, turn off the lights, right?
Oh, it was totally true. Foreclosures on every street. We had neighbors who had to move out of state to get a job. 1,200 savings and loans went under. If you finished a job as an engineer, you were let go. Same with a drafter or purchasing person. So jobs did not want to finish. Really tough on the clients. And so there was just no loyalty anywhere. And as on a gung-ho airborne ranger, what hecked me off was in 85, they let a bunch of really good people go in November, hired them back at $5 less an hour in January because they could. So it just took this whole thing out on the people. So when we started Mustang, it was like, hey, we're going to be a 35-person company. We're going to be super. We're going to keep the same people together so we'll get better on every job instead of hiring and firing, which was the practice in that industry. And so we started in 87. We wanted to be at 35 people by the end of 18 months. We were there at the end of 7 weeks, despite an unbelievable downturn. But we had a saying. It was, don't limit your options. So we ended up in that first year working for Metro, the bus company, and won that project because of our expertise in offshore, and we were competing against their normal folks. But we could differentiate because of our teams and what we called in the Army energy and enthusiasm that really set us apart. And I think your listeners know how that energy and enthusiasm can be a force multiplier when you get that and you weld that into a team.
Yeah.
So when we started, sort of some of the steps in the Culture Code Champions. So my book just came out. In fact, today Amazon's delivered them to people.
Nice.
But it's 7 steps to scale and succeed in your business. And the first one is to open the communications. So in the oil patch, you had a structure and a production facility and a pipeline and purchasing. All of those groups were siloed. So one would be in one hallway, another in the other hallway, purchasing on a different floor. I always say that electrical engineers were out in the parking lot because nobody can talk to an electrical engineer. But what we did is we busted those silos and we put everybody together, and it reduced the rework on a design. So once you get the communications and you bust the silos, now you're not reworking. And all of a sudden, our cost per project got way better than our competitors. And that allowed us to sell more. And so one of the things, your people that are, especially in small businesses, I try to convince them. We had this thing called no fate leadership. And I pulled that from the Terminator movie where Sarah Connors is carving in that tabletop, no fate. She was going to not let what was supposed to happen in the future happen. So my thing was, there's no fate that you have to go up and down with your industry. How do you build a company that when the industry goes down, you go level so that your teams are ready on the next upturn? You hit it hard. Next downturn, you go level again. And if you look at our growth pattern over 20 years, that's what we did. We did never backstep. So huge thing to have a no-fate leadership philosophy, but part of that is selling while the shop is full. And the big problem is small companies, $200 million or less, is when they get overloaded, too much work going on, they stop selling. And then something will happen.
So don't have this even pipeline anymore.
The job will get canceled.
Yeah,
you can't just turn it on. You've got, if you're not selling all the time. And what we found is that sometimes that actually helps your efficiency. I remember one time we got projects on a Friday. 4 of them we had to take on because it was repeat work. And so once we had a client, we wanted to own that client and not turn a nose down. But out of the 3 others, one of them we needed to turn down, but we knew the guy pretty well. So we went down to his office Tuesday to turn it down. And back then, you could just walk right into oil company, no security or anything. Went back to his office, and it's full of people. And so we motioned for him to come out in the hallway. Say, hey, Pete, what are all these people here for? He says, well, they're here for the kickoff meeting. I said, oh, we were coming down to turn down this project. A little bit embarrassing out there in the hallways. I always say it's time to dance like a butterfly, sting like a bee. And so, or my wife says, be a lion sales dog. So I told him, hey, Pete, it's a pretty normal project. If we could define all the equipment instead of putting it into engineering, I'll just put it into purchasing. They'll go out for bids, and by the time the bids come back in, engineering will be available, and we could do the project sort of in reverse. Pete's a pretty experienced guy. He said, I'll do it. Come on in. So imagine the embarrassment when I go back to my partners and I say, you can't send Bill to turn down projects. He's a sales guy. But that project, we did that project for 60% of our estimate because we were overloaded and just did what we needed to do. And we got really good at staying a little bit overloaded, so everybody was trying to get more efficient at what they were doing.
Yeah.
But then our hiring practice, so one of our things is we were always looking for good people in an upswing or in a downswing. And we were always high grading our people because we get new people in with better technical than maybe some of our old people. And if our old people would not start learning, we shuffled them off. And we always high graded our people in good times and bad. We used a thing I call Operation Horse Thief.
Horse thief?
Horse thief. And so I have a lot of these things where I made it sort of a fun thing to keep it in front of people's mind. So Operation Horse Thief is identifying the horses in all of the other companies, and then that's your target list. Go get those horses.
That's your new hiring target.
So, yeah, so like we would have a new hire breakfast with our management team and all the new hires, and we'd thank them for coming, find out what project they were on. We'd work our culture at that new hire breakfast. But then we'd ask them, who are the 5 best people you've ever worked with in the industry? And they would go on our list. And it was probably in around the 15th year, had an electrical designer at a new hire breakfast. And he says, the 5 best people I know are all here. I said, well, you're the first one. But so you don't have to give me anybody from my list. But I think your military people, your first responders, know that it's all about people and talent.
Yeah.
And if you're not continually high grading that, you're not going to differentiate. You're not going to keep setting the bar higher in what you're doing. The other thing that we like to do was to give back to the community. So we worked our culture really hard to where, I mean, we had mottos, we had myths, we had our flag. This was like being in the 101st Airborne. I mean, we had songs, chants, the whole ball of wax. We even had a mascot. Might as well have been a college football team, but we had Blue, the horse, because we were a Mustang company. But we did all of that stuff to pull people together, and we logoed toys and things. So there were toys in the kids' toy boxes from skating parties or whatever. And in the 4th year, I had a lady come up to me at our Christmas party, and she said, Bill, she grabbed me by the shoulders because I sort of bounce around a lot. She said, listen to me. And she said, my husband has changed since they've come to Mustang. He gets up, he's excited to go to work in the morning, comes home, he's got energy, he's engaging with the family. He's even talking about going to church on Sunday. You've changed our life as a family. Keep doing what you're doing. And that just kept going. And eventually then we started really giving back to the communities because people had the energy to do that. But you would be amazed. Giving back to the community takes organization. And so our secretaries or personal assistants, drafters, purchasing people, cross-section would be involved in these things. And you'd be amazed, but in some of these outside activities, we would identify people with leadership capability that we didn't know about in the company.
Yeah, because they were in that role, right? Yeah, that's
right. Nobody would give that to them. And so then we'd say, oh, well, you've got some extra capability, and we'd give them some other things to do at work, and people would move from being a secretary into purchasing, or move from purchasing into drafting. And it would like totally change their pay scale, things like that. So a lot of the steps are interrelated, and I think the military people are used to understanding that the mission requires all of those different talents and the different personalities. You got to bring them together, work the communication. You need to have a repeatable process of how you do things so people know the marching orders, know how to do it the most efficient method. And I just think they need to not discount the background that they're bringing. I think there's way more value than people give it credit for. And we ended up pulling in Black Hawk pilots and all kinds of other people. And we would teach them some skills, but normally within 6 months, their leadership skills, jumped them up 3 or 4 spots. So
yeah. And so now
it really works.
So you sold your company in 2000.
Yes.
It was $1 billion company then. So that's an amazing engineering startup firm. Talk about some of the larger projects you were doing. For an Army guy, this is impressive.
It was pretty crazy. One of my favorite ones was we got the Exxon Diana project. And so in 95, all of the major oil companies came to us, and I had to pinch myself. One at a time, they're in our conference room. They bring the whole staff, and they say, we need to Mustangize how we do work, or we're going to go out of business. And this is Exxon. This is British Petroleum.
Wow.
This is Texaco. This is Chevron. This is Conoco. This is Arco. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Wow.
And since we hadn't worked for a number of them, we gave them both barrels. And we said, well, I don't think you can do it. What had been happening is like for Conoco, we had done 2 projects, and they were top quartile for performance at Conoco. And they got seen by these other companies. We'd done the same thing for Mobil. But within Mustang, they didn't make top quartile. For us, the top quartile projects, best costs and schedule, were for the independent oil companies could really, what we say in the Army, move, shoot, and communicate. Just, make it happen.
Agile.
Make a decision that would stick. That's why we show Exxon and Texaco and Chevron and these people. We say, we could do it. This is how you need to do it. Well, Exxon sent us a bid package for their first deep water project, 5,000 foot of water. But it was their same old bid package. It was like 5 inches thick. So I turned in a non-conforming bid the way we would do it if they really wanted to change. And a friend of mine from British Petroleum they were a partner on the project with Exxon. And so he was involved in the evaluation. He calls me up and he says, Bill, your bid's in the trash can. I go, what? And he says, yeah, we read it, but it looks like you're overloaded, so they're not going to keep considering you. And I said, oh, well, let me send you some new information. And we got out of the trash can. And 2 more times he called, we were in the trash can. And then we ended up getting awarded the project. And the head of Exxon sat with me and said, we are going to change how we do business. We're going to figure out how to do it the Mustang way.
Wow.
And it was crazy. We go to the kickoff meeting after 2 months of prep work, and this head of Exxon is walking down the hall, and he's ashen-faced, and I said, hey, Lynn, what's going on? He says, well, I just got a call. I'm going to be talking about it at this kickoff dinner where we're going to have skits and all kinds of fun stuff. They had just discovered the biggest oil reservoir in the Gulf of Mexico right next to where this project was going to be, and this was going to be an easy gas platform, although in 5,000 foot. So now it became 20 times as big. It became an $8 billion size project instead of a $350 million size project. And I just knew they were going to take it to Fluor or Brown and Root or Bechtel. But they stuck with us. And when they benchmarked that project at the end, normally a project that's moving fast like that at Exxon. Oh, and I got to tell you, so in my meeting with Exxon to get the award, we're talking about doing win-win contracting. Because we want both sides to win, Exxon to win, us to win, and the contractors to win. One of their project people takes me out in the hallway at a break, and he says, Bill, you don't understand the definition of win-win at Exxon. It means that Exxon wins twice. But they came around, and we did that project below the budget, and normally they run 80% over budget on a project that moves that fast. So for the coach that was helping us, so we used a sales process called Miller-Hyman. And for your listeners, if you can use a sales process, it will mint you money. A sales process, there was a name person in the client organization that you're chasing, and one of the people you need to find is a coach, somebody on the inside who thinks you're the right answer. So that BP person on the inside thought we were the right answer and kept calling me and saying, hey, send them some more information. I think you're the right answer. He was totally right, because saving that 180%, taking it down to 90% cost was like $700 million that we saved on this project. So there's some real cool things, and I think the military, the first responders, those are the type people that companies and organizations are looking for.
Wow. So you're running a podcast now. You wrote a book. The podcast is really helping to get out the messages about how really one of your missions is to pay it forward and help out the cultures of other companies. Did I get that right?
Yeah, and real fun. I had a classmate of mine on one of the first ones, General Petraeus.
Oh, yeah. Good man.
CIA. So he was on the soccer team with me. I called him and said, hey, you want to do a podcast? He says, yeah, let's do it. And really interesting in there on the march into Baghdad and some of his comments there. And then another classmate of mine, General Martin Dempsey, who was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, he was in my company, F2 Zoo, and interviewed he. But then I also interviewed his wife. People don't understand the toll it takes on the families of first responders, of military people, and their family is totally involved in what's going on. One of my hardest things to do at Mustang in those early days was to engage the families. It's just not common in the civilian world. It's very common in the military because you had to take care of those families during deployments or whatever. When we brought that touchy-feely part of culture of bringing the families in and letting them understand the business of what was going on, I really think that was a game changer.
Wow, I'm sure it was.
And so there's...
Yeah, I had the pleasure of
also
working for General Dempsey when I was my last job at the Pentagon. He's an amazing gentleman, amazing guy.
He's super. But I also podcast with a number of really strong women. And we had a number of women in charge of things at Mustang, really when there weren't that many women in the industry. It was pretty male-dominated. But after I was CEO, our hand-picked person, Steve Knowles, took over. And then from him, Michelle McNichol took over. And she came to the company in 2000, about the sale time, and took over as CEO about 15 years later. So she's just a water walker. But interview some very strong women, which I think is good for the daughters out there to listen and hear some of the obstacles they had to overcome and how they did it in some male-dominated industries. One of them, Sandy Coleman at NASA. And she started out as a Girl Scout. She met Werner von Braun and decided, I'm going to go to NASA and I'm going to work for that guy. And she ended up being the secretary right outside his office. Fast forward 30 years, she's in charge of the external tank on the shuttle. And her story is just amazing in how she overcame, a lot of obstacles in her career.
Wow. So what did you do after selling the company in 2000 up to present?
In 2000, we sold, and we were at about $100 million there. We hit $1 billion in 2008, hit $2 billion in 2014. Now it's about $7 billion a year, and it's a people type business. So it's based on the number of folks you have, domestically and internationally. While we were for sale, normally you don't want to tell anybody you're selling a company because your good people leave and your clients stop giving you work. They want to wait till the dust settles.
Sure.
And we were using a M&A group out of Chase, and we said, no, we've built up too much loyalty in the industry. We're going to have to tell our people in the industry what we're doing. And they said, no, don't do that. But I wrote a pamphlet on why we were selling. And on a Monday morning, I had my pastor come in, and we did a prayer for the management team because this could have been the end of Mustang in 2000. And we announced to our people that we were going to sell, and we handed out these pamphlets. And we had 300 people from the old lit one that had been bought by Raytheon, and the company had disintegrated. So exactly what Chase said happened.
Yeah.
So I went up to the meeting with the 300 because I mean, this is just 3 years past when all that happened to them. And one of them stood up after getting the pamphlet and reading through it and said, what can we say outside of here, Bill? And I said, well, if you think this is really great, when you walk out of here, you can call and tell anybody. If you think this is the worst thing that's going to happen and it's going to be like when Raytheon, take this home, go through it with your spouse, come in, ask your questions in the morning. And if you still think it's going to be horrible, Tuesday, that's what you're free to go tell everybody. And then the next day, we announced it to the contractors and all the oil companies. And it goes around the world fast in the oil patch. Every industry has their own little network. So it went around the world. And by Thursday, it was a non-event. Oil companies came back and said, it's the right thing for you to do. Please don't mess it up. You're the best company. Contractors said the same thing. Everybody went back to work. And during that 9-month sale process, we won all of the major projects in all of our sectors, upstream, downstream, automation, pipeline.
Wow.
But have you heard the saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Drucker's sort of.
Mm-hmm. Stephen Drucker, yeah.
They say that he said that first.
Yeah.
But while we were for sale, the bid was out for 4 of these floating cities and one big project from British Petroleum. But the partners on one of them was Exxon, and another was Chevron Texaco, and another one was Conoco. And we won that project while we were for sale. And I go in to sign the contract, and everybody's in this room, and I asked the project director, I said, why did you pick us for this? Because it was huge, 4 of these projects at the same time. And he said, well, we got together, we did a lot of interviews, and our feeling was that whoever won this is going to have to hire 1,200 people. And we decided that your culture makes you the absolute best at hiring and assembling and building well-functioning teams over anybody else. And Fluor and Bechtel and Brown and Root had it as their strategic objective was to win that project. That was the biggest, for me, ever seeing culture eating strategy for breakfast. For us to beat out Fluor, Bechtel, and Brown and Root for the project in 2000 while for sale was pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And
wow.
It set us up as, the player in the industry.
And so after the sale, you stuck with the company for a while and ran it, or how did that? Was it a transition?
Well, because all that work, we were in major hiring mode for like 2.5 years. And so in 2004, things calmed down a little, and we started an intensive training of our 2nd, 3rd, and 4th generation. We had a Young Guns program that had started in 98, where by year group we were bringing young people in and teaching them our methods and our culture. In 2004, we started really handing leadership tasks over to other people. And in 2006, we handed over the presidency to Steve Knowles. And then in 2008, when we hit $1 billion, my partner and I, we retired out, turned it all over to Steve Knowles, and I snuck off to Charlotte so nobody could call me.
And you watched a lot of NASCAR or something.
Yeah, a lot of NASCAR over here, but we've loved Charlotte. People were after me to write a book, so I wrote a book, Mustang, the story, which was sort of from when we were thinking about Mustang, up through the sale and a little bit after. But then my kids beat me up because they both have their own companies. And I said, Dad, all this stuff you taught us at Mustang, it's all in that book, but it's hard to dig it out. You need to write a new book. And Forbes picked me up when they saw the outline and said, we need to sponsor this book at Forbes Books and make you a Forbes author and speaker to take this cultural message, out to the world and really take it internationally. So that's what this new book is. It's Culture Code Champion, 7 Steps to Scale and Succeed in Your Business. But it's exact how-tos. Do these things or some variation of these things and put a champion to make it a habit. And those habits will change the destiny of your organization. So, that's what I'm working to do.
That is amazing. That is awesome. And so you're going around and you're speaking and teaching this as well now.
Yes, and there's going to be a training program and everything available to people, because in those steps we talk about, how to sell, because if there's plenty of work for people, I call it job on the corner of the desk. If you can put a job on the corner of somebody's desk and say, hurry up and finish what you're doing to get on this other job, now they've got job security.
Yeah.
Now they're comfortable and they can engage in your culture. If they're worried about they're not going to be listening about your culture.
Right.
Just not going to happen. So,
that's amazing.
So we talked about a number of things in the steps. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to dive into it. I look very much forward to getting that book. It's just inspiring, and it's been a tremendous, you probably don't know this, but it's been over 35 minutes already. And we've just been going. It's awesome.
Sorry about that.
No, it's been perfect. I love it. So what have we not talked about that's got to happen before the end of this amazing podcast? Or have you covered it?
One of my favorite things is a thing, well, I'll tell you how it works. So engineering specifies a pump that nobody can find. Purchasing comes back and says, hey, engineer, this thing's made out of Unobtainium. Unobtainium, I added it to the periodic table. In every company, there are people, I call them ours were engineers, that create Unobtainium. They design from scratch. They write a paper from scratch. They do a spreadsheet from scratch. And it all has to get redone and reworked and leads to inefficiency. And it's one of the things I push hard is go find that Unobtainium and put in a process to get rid of it. And you'll totally set your organization apart from others where they're reinventing the wheel all the time.
Yeah, that's way inefficient.
But you saw that in the military.
Yeah.
In the military, you always use the same systems and methods over and over and over. You just tweak them a little bit.
Yeah.
In the civilian world, they have trouble doing that. They think they get to just start from scratch each time. And I think the military and the first responders can bring that discipline. No, we just keep hitting the same note, and it works every time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That is great advice.
Yeah.
Wow. So how do the listeners find you?
So you can go to culturecodechampions.podcast.com. And my website, Culture Code Champions, is actually launching this week. So it'll have all kinds of ways to connect into either book and to connect into the podcast, also connect into training and things like that. But to your listeners, it'll be music to their ears. And I think when they go into their organization, they bring it and said, hey, let's look at this stuff. They'll be able to explain it to the people that they're working with.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Bill. It's been tremendous, and it flew by. Hopefully, I have no doubt it did for the audience as well, because I was riveted. Man, I can't wait to have you back on and find out how the whole coaching and training program is working out.
Yeah, it'd be fun to talk again in April, Gary.
Absolutely. We'll look forward to it. Bill, thanks so much for joining us. Take care.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.